This is The God Boy by Ian Cross. Chapter 1. You'd think I'd care, and I did for a while, but not now. While it was happening, and for some time after, I cared so much I must have been nearly mad. But I don't care now. I don't. I can remember everything, though. It is not that I don't care because I've forgotten. Boy, I can remember every second, just about. And I will lie in bed at night and think about it because I can't help myself. And I sort of like to do it. But I don't care. I suppose my attitude to the whole affair is like going to a dentist. At least the way I feel when I go to a dentist. All nervous and worried and scared. But once I'm in the chair and the drill has been boring away for a while, it makes no difference to me. I just sit there and I think that if the dentist started to cut me up into little pieces, I wouldn't care. I'm like some of those soldiers that get medals and these gangsters in the films. It seems silly for me to say this, with me living in a place like this, and all the nuns flapping around, prayers in church and confession and communion, and all that stupid stuff. It seems silly, as I say, for a kid like me, here saying I feel that way. But I know how I would be in a war or a gangster fight. It's a pity that in a country like New Zealand, we don't actually get wars and gangster fights. And I know that you have to go halfway around the world to find that kind of rough stuff. If you go one way, you hit the South Pole, so that's no use. And the other way, you have to keep going over the sea until you're way past Australia before any decent trouble begins. But even so, allowing that it may seem silly for a kid like me saying I feel this way, I know how I would be in a war or gangster fight. I know it. Just know it. I know I don't give a darn whatever happens to me. And I know I would love shooting and kicking out at my enemies, not giving a darn what they try to do to me. Even now, and I'm still 13, I'm good enough to be boss of the kids here, and some of them are very nearly 15. When I get into a scrap, I fight to the end, and anybody would have to kill me before I'd stop going for them. They'd have to kill me or give in, because there's nothing they can do to me to stop me getting at them unless they kill me. Ray Brown, for instance, he bit me because he is stronger, but he is soft. And when he saw all the blood over my face, he wanted to stop, really, though he went on fighting. He still hit at me, but he wanted to stop. And he started to get frightened because I was still after him, not giving a darn, even though I had hardly been able to touch him, and yet had been messed up myself. When he started to want to stop, even though he went on fighting, I got him by the cheeks with each hand and just tore at them. Then he got really frightened, and I made a bigger mess of him than he made of me. I'm not a skite, but if I was fighting a man, it would be the same. He would have to kill me to beat me. Knocking me out wouldn't do him any good, because when I came to, I would go after him again, no matter how many times he knocked me out. I would go after him for weeks and months, till he either gave in or killed me. And I wouldn't give a darn. I wouldn't be any use breaking my arms or legs or anything like that. I would still go after him. As I said, I'm the boss round here, and there's no arguments, really. I keep in with the nuns all right, too, because I'm pretty good with my prayers and the other stuff. And though there was a tremendous fuss about the big fight with Ray Brown, that was a year ago and all forgotten. I keep in with the prayers because you have to. And me with no home now, I need this place for the education and all that. You have to be educated, and I like learning. For that matter, though, I said all this prayer and communion and confession is stupid. I don't mind it, really. You can't be smart all the time. I'm very smart too, by the way, top of the class, and I can see the nuns are impressed by me. I've always been very clever, but I was talking about religion. Boy, I'm clever enough to have my own ideas there. You know, if I went after God, I could beat him too, unless he killed me. And he wouldn't want to. If I know God, and there I would have him, I'd be Pope, whether he liked it or not. And boy, I would tell people about God and he wouldn't be able to do anything about it except kill me. It doesn't worry me in the slightest bit talking about my mother and father, because I don't care. But I'll tell you how I used to care, just to show you. I was 11 then. I'll try to get everything into order, Make a story out of it, sort of, so you can see. I don't mind talking, though. I never have before, because I know I don't care, and I don't mind thinking about it, and I'm glad to talk, especially as I don't care. I remember walking home with Dad that time, and he's saying, "Home we go to our loving wife and mother, and one more round in the heavyweight championship of the world." I knew what he meant, but I said nothing, and he went on, "You don't like my drinking, boy? That's it, isn't it?" Funny, that was just after the bike business now, that I think of it. Joe Waters and I had been fooling around with his bike this evening when he saw Dad coming up the road on his way home from work. Dad was quite good looking, well built, but not big. Mum was bigger than he was, and he had this lame arm, and when he was walking quickly, it jiggled at his side. It was jiggling this day. Our town, that place, Raggleton, way down there by the sea, was a big place, no village in the country. It had a hotel 2 stories high and 2 barber shops, and there were pitchers twice a week. There must be well over 1,000 people living there. Dad worked in the harbour board office, and once he said to me, "I haven't been a success in life, son." "You certainly are better than a lot of people around here, Dad," I said. "You dress up for work every day, for instance, and a lot of others don't." He never saw the point of that. And now I see, really, he was talking about something else. When you think of what happened, whatever it was not a success. Though I don't care. I'm just as well off. This bike, we were playing with that as Dad came up the road. I didn't have a bike and always wanted one. So I just took the bike off Joe and worked this stunt with me, pedaling fast down toward Joe, taking my feet off the pedals and putting my hands on the seat. And with a shove, jumping back off the bike, landing on my feet, more or less, Joe caught the bike. These were the times I did care, so don't get confused. When I talk about my feelings then, and confuse them with my feelings now, I'm just remembering my own feelings when I talk this way, like you can remember anything else. My feelings then were pretty good. I know because they got so bad when Dad spoke. He was right up to us when I had finished working that stunt. "You're really red hot, son." I knew as soon as I heard his voice. I felt bad. I didn't like to think of him and Mum at all, because I knew what would happen when I got home. I knew all right. Joe Waters pulled the bike round and said, "I'll be off home now. See you in the morning, Jimmy. Goodbye, Mr. Sullivan." Dad took a step toward Joe and said, "Let me show you something there." There was a smile on his face that was loose and didn't look as though it was for anything in particular. When he had been drinking and was in a good mood, he smiled like that. Sometimes just sitting in that big armchair in the lounge at home. He wasn't as big as most other men, and not as wide. And in the big armchair, sitting there smiling and nothing, he looked really little. Standing over Joe, he looked big. I rushed over and said, "Dad, it's time we went home." "How did you know what your old father was going to do?" he asked. Well, I knew he was going to ride the bike and make a fool of himself, and as he looked at me, he must have seen what I was worrying about, because he smiled, and he said, "You're right, son. Let's get on home." As he walked home, he made those remarks about home to our loving wife and mother, and then asked me if his drinking worried me. That's where I really meant to begin this story. But I got mixed up there, interested in the bike. I've grown out of liking bikes, don't you worry. They are useful, I know, but I certainly don't like them very much. Anyway, there I lost the story, which should have started off with Dad drunk and our going straight home after that. But now that I've mentioned Joe Waters, I'll just say this about him. His mother and father used to go to church together with him, and once a month they'd take him to the pitchers. I used to think that was great, and I couldn't help envying Joe. When I look back, I've got a lot of ideas about parents, and you might think this is funny me with my background, and not really caring, but I have these ideas, and I think they could be described as scientific. Heck now, I started off with Dad talking to me as we walked home, and here we are no further on. Well, I didn't say a word when he asked me about his drinking, and he went on. "I've been looking at your face, Jimmy, and I know you don't like me drinking, but mark my words, when you grow up, you'll probably find that all the decency in life you can find is in a bar, drinking with a few friends, real friends. I was thinking about what would happen when we got home, and what it would be like. It's taking me as long to get Dad and I home as it would for me to be actually going home myself in those days. I can remember, before all the trouble began, running up the road to home. Later on, all I wanted to do was run down that road. You've got to remember, I wasn't so old then, and I felt these things. Well, anyway, Dad and I got home, and I went inside ahead of him, and of course it happened to me again. I went inside, and even though all this had been going on for a long time now, I still half expected that I would come home one day and it would be all over and everything right again. Even then I remember going inside and there was this hope. A kid is always hoping. That is where they are different from grown-ups. When a kid hopes, he really hopes. But when a grown-up hopes, I get the idea he hopes and doesn't hope at the same time. My going inside then, I suppose it was the warmth of the house and seeing Mum bending over the stovetop, cooking, looking so big and warm herself, that made me hope. "We're home," I said as we went in the kitchen. "Wash your hands and come to the table," she said, without looking up. That would be because Dad was behind me. "Be just a sec, Mum," I said. "Be back to eat a horse." I ducked back past Dad into the passage and closed the door behind me. "Put the towel back on the rack, young man. Don't throw it over the edge of the bath." She was always on to me about that. After I closed the door, I really wanted to go on down the passage to the bathroom. I wanted to, yet I didn't. I had to listen. It was funny with me. I couldn't help listening to what my mother and father were saying to each other, even though it did me no good. This time I knew what they would say, and I knew what would happen to me, and still I listened. I moved a little up from the door to the middle of the passage and stretched both of my arms out till my fingers were touching the wallpaper on each side. I was a queer fish, I suppose, but that was the way I was. The wallpaper touching it like that was one of my protection tricks. I still like wallpaper, if you want to know. Wallpaper with those whirling designs as a pattern. I heard my mother say, "You drunken pig," to my father. "You go about with the boy while you're sodden with drink?" "For God's sake, shut up," he said. "You ought to be ashamed of yourself. Dish up the food and keep your nagging tongue in your head." A lot of talk like that. I can just about repeat word for word. I have a very good memory. There is no doubt about that. When I heard those words, it happened to me again. This must have been the 4th or 5th time I had to use my protection tricks. As I heard them talking like that, I could see how Mother would be looking, because I had seen her that way often with my father. She would be all hot and warm, and she'd stare at him in a way that would frighten me, and she always had a fist up alongside her head. Even though I was out in the passage, I could feel her so much. It was almost as though she was pressed up right next to me. I pushed my fingers till my nails dug into the wallpaper, and as I said, it happened to me again. The air just went cold, as it did those times before, and started sticking to my skin on my arms and legs and face, everywhere. I had seen a marble statue in a museum, a well-built man doubled over throwing something, and the feeling reminded me of him. It was as if I was starting to be made of marble, and my heart started banging away so much it shook me. I knew what to do, and I managed to get to the bathroom, though I could hardly move my legs. I said, "Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus," and turned on the hot water tap over the bath and shoved my hands under. The hot water cleaned away the marble feeling whenever it touched, and there was only the ordinary skin there. Then I said, "Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen," and dipped the flannel in the hot water and rubbed it all over me. I got wet and messed up, yet it worked. The last protection trick of mine was to sing jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride on a one-horse open sleigh. I had other songs. Hail, Queen of the Sea, which the nuns taught us at school. It's a Long Way to Tipperary, which my father taught me. And naturally, the national anthem. I only had to sing one song at these times. It didn't make any difference which one.